Ehud Barak is an Israeli general and politician who was Prime Minister of Israel from 1999 to 2001. Barak was born in a kibbutz that had been founded by his father, an emigrant from Lithuania, in 1932. Barak was drafted into the Israel Defense Forces in 1959, thus beginning a distinguished military career. He changed his name at this time. He was a commander in battles in the Six-Day War, 1967, and the Yom Kippur War, 1973, but became especially known as the leader of special forces units that conducted commando raids. These included a group of soldiers, with Benjamin Netanyahu among them, who stormed an airliner hijacked by Palestinian guerrillas at Lod International Airport near Tel Aviv in 1972, freeing all the hostages. Barak served as head of military intelligence, and in 1991 he became Chief of General Staff. In 1994 he participated in the negotiations that resulted in a peace accord with Jordan. When he retired in 1995 as a lieutenant general, the Army's highest rank, he was the most decorated soldier in Israeli history. Barak had received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Physics and Mathematics from Hebrew University of Jerusalem, 1968, and an MS degree in Economic Engineering Systems from Stanford University in California, 1978. Entrance into politics and premiership. He turned his attention to politics in the mid-1990s. Under Labour governments he was Minister of the Interior in 1995 and Minister of Foreign Affairs in 1995 to 96. He was elected to the Knesset, Israeli parliament, in May 1996. In June 1997 he became head of the Labour Party and 2 years later ran for Prime Minister under the coalition One Israel, which included Labour as well as the Gesher Party and Mamad, the latter a spin-off of the National Religious Party. Barak emphasized economic and other domestic issues, including education and health services, as well as relations with the Palestinians and with Syria and Lebanon. The withdrawal of minor candidates late in the campaign allowed a face-off between incumbent Netanyahu, of the ruling Likud Party, and Barak. On May 17, 1999, Barak won an easy victory with slightly more than 56% of the popular vote. At the same time, smaller parties increased their seats in the Knesset. The election results were seen as a turning away from the hardline policies, particularly in relations with the Palestinians, pursued by Netanyahu. As Prime Minister, Barak pledged to establish peace in the Middle East, and in September 1999 he reactivated peace talks with Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. The two men signed a deal that called for the creation of a final peace accord by September 2000 as well as the transfer of more Israeli-occupied territory in the West Bank to Palestinian control. In December 1999, Barak resumed peace talks with Syria after more than 3 years of deadlock, and he also ended Israel's 17-year occupation of southern Lebanon. Beginning in the summer of 2000, however, Barak faced a series of crises. In July his coalition collapsed after 3 parties quit, leaving him with a minority government. Later that month he narrowly won a vote of confidence in the Knesset. In September violence erupted in the West Bank and Gaza, seriously threatening the peace talks. Barak met with Arafat, but the resulting ceasefire agreement was all but ignored. As fighting continued, Barak announced a timeout from peacemaking. The move was thought to appease the growing opposition to Barak's government, especially that led by Ariel Sharon, the Likud Party leader. In December 2000 Barak resigned as Prime Minister, and a new election was slated for February 2001. Barak ran for re-election but was criticized by many Israelis for his inability to halt the violence and for allegedly making too many concessions during the peace talks. At the polls, they overwhelmingly cast their ballots for Sharon. After receiving only 37% of the vote, Barak announced his resignation both as Labour leader and as a member of the Knesset. Later career. In 2007 Barak staged a political comeback as he was re-elected leader of the Labour Party. Soon after, he became Defense Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, positions he also held under the Netanyahu administration that took power in March 2009. In January 2011, Barak announced that he would leave the Labour Party and, along with 4 other Labour members of the Knesset, form a breakaway party, Otzma, Independence, that was expected to remain in Netanyahu's ruling coalition. The Labour Party, a key member of the coalition, had been in the grips of a struggle. Members who were critical of the government's handling of the peace process pushed for the party to leave the coalition, while the Barak-led faction was generally supportive of the Netanyahu government. Barak's realignment was seen as a boost for the ruling coalition since it created a more stable, albeit smaller, majority, insulated from the threats of critics in the Labour Party. In November 2012, Barak announced his retirement from politics. He said that he would remain in his posts as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense until a new cabinet could be formed following elections scheduled for January 2013. He officially left government 2 months later. In 2018, Barak became chairman of the biomedical firm in Turkey after being approached by the company to help grow its medical cannabis subsidiary, Canndoc. Israel was among the leading countries in the research and development of medical cannabis, and public support for the expansion of the cannabis industry was growing increasingly salient. In January 2019, the government approved the export of medical-grade marijuana. Meanwhile, a new pro-cannabis party was anticipated to be a likely kingmaker after elections in the spring, though it ultimately fell short of the electoral threshold to enter the Knesset. Though the results of those elections favored a right-wing government, they failed to produce a ruling coalition, and a new set of elections were called for September. In June, Barak announced a return to politics in an effort to garner additional support for a center-left coalition, and in July he joined the 10th slot on a list led by the left-wing Meretz Party. The list won only 5 seats, however, and he was not returned to the Knesset. Barak's memoir, My Country, My Life, Fighting for Israel, Searching for Peace, was published in 2018. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak serves as a senior advisor to BGR. Prime Minister Barak possesses unique vast knowledge and experience regarding political, technology, security, defense, and international affairs, among other issues. Following a career in the Israel Defense Forces, where he was the most decorated soldier in Israeli history and served as Chief of General Staff, Mr. Barak entered politics and served Israel in several capacities, including Prime Minister and Minister of Defense. As Israel's 10th Prime Minister, Mr. Barak led the country out of a prolonged recession and into an economic boom, with high annual growth and foreign investments, near zero inflation, a heavy deficit and significantly decreased external debt. However, the core of Mr. Barak's government's effort was devoted to the peace process. In May 2000, Prime Minister Barak ordered the withdrawal of the IDF from South Lebanon, ending 18 years of Israel's presence there. He led far-reaching efforts to negotiate peace agreements, first with Syria and later with the Palestinian Authority, with the active participation of President Bill Clinton and his administration. Regrettably, these negotiations did not result in the breakthroughs necessary to conclude final agreements. Mr. Barak was bestowed the U.S. Department of Defense Distinguished Public Service Award in 2012 by U.S. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. The same year, Foreign Policy magazine named him 13th among its 100 global thinkers. He is a graduate in physics, mathematics, and economics from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Stanford University. Born at Kibbutz Mishmar HaSharon, Ehud Barak enlisted in the Israeli Army at age 17, and saw significant action leading a commando unit in the 1967 Six-Day War. His superiors noted his exceptional bravery and coolness under fire. When hostilities erupted again in the Yom Kippur War of 1973, Barak commanded a tank battalion on the Sinai Front. Although his academic education was repeatedly interrupted by calls to active duty, Barak found time to earn an undergraduate degree in physics and mathematics from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and a master's degree in economic engineering systems from Stanford University. In addition to his scientific and military interests, he is a talented pianist and linguist. For many years, he led Israel's elite anti-terrorist unit, on one occasion successfully storming a hijacked airliner in Tel Aviv, and on another disguised as a woman leading a raid against the organization that murdered Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics. He also played a pivotal role in planning what has been described as the most audacious and perfectly executed special forces operation in history, the Entebbe raid and hostage rescue mission. After serving as head of Israeli intelligence and central command during the 1980s, Barak was appointed Army Chief of Staff, his country's top military leader, in 1991. After 5 distinguished years as Chief of Staff, Barak stepped down to become Interior Minister in the government headed by his mentor, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The former warrior who fearlessly faced death on the battlefield brought a different kind of courage to his new job, striving to engage the Palestinian leadership in a productive dialogue. In 1995, when Rabin was assassinated by a domestic extremist, Shimon Peres became Prime Minister, and Barak replaced Peres as Foreign Minister. Barak was propelled to leadership of the Labour Party following Peres's narrow electoral loss to Benjamin Netanyahu. Barak became Prime Minister in his own right when he led the Labour Party to a landslide victory in 1999. As Prime Minister, he ended Israel's 17-year occupation of southern Lebanon and offered unprecedented concessions to the Palestinians. Barak's peace offer was rejected, the Palestinians broke off negotiations, and the subsequent outbreak of violence led to Barak's defeat in the next election. Barak declined an offer to serve as Minister of Defense in the subsequent government headed by Likud leader Ariel Sharon. For the next few years Barak pursued a business career in Israel and the United States, joining private equity firms with interests in security-related industries. In June 2007, Barak was once again elected to lead the Labour Party and was immediately appointed to serve as Minister of Defense in the reorganized coalition government. Although Barak's Labour Party placed fourth in the parliamentary election of February 2009, he was reappointed as Minister of Defense in a new coalition government led by the Likud Party. As Defense Minister, Barak continued to advocate a negotiated settlement with the Palestinians, while supporting the government's hard line on security issues. Many of his allies in the Labour Party, frustrated with the breakdown of peace talks, pressured Barak to leave the coalition, forcing him to choose between his party and the government. In January 2011, he shocked the political world by leaving the party he had led for many years. The other Labour members in the cabinet divided over Barak's decision. Some remained in the coalition alongside him, while others resigned their posts. Ehud Barak continued to serve as Minister of Defense while leading a centrist faction called Independence. At the end of 2012 he announced his decision to retire from electoral politics. Thank you for watching this video.